Let me step on the gas right now. I'm in eco mode. I'm gonna floor it. It spun the wheels. We're at 2,060 miles. When I left the garage, it was 2,051 miles. So we drove roughly 9 miles, and we still have 41 miles of EV range. Hi everybody, I'm here to check in on our Rav4 Prime. We're at 2,000 miles. So I thought I'd check in and kind of tell you how the car's been going. This is fresh out of the garage on a full charge. It currently says distance to empty 50 miles. I think 50 miles is a little bit enthusiastic because I don't think we've ever gotten 50 miles out of a full charge. I've noticed that with each subsequent charge, our distance to empty has gone up a little bit. So the first couple times we charged up, it would say distance to empty 34 miles. But right now the dash says 50. Obviously the battery didn't increase, but I think it tries to calculate the range based on the most recent driving patterns and temperatures and all that. Right now it's about 50 degrees outside. It says 67 on the dash only because it's probably 67 in my garage right now. We drive this car on eco all the time. We don't touch anything. I would say about 80% or 90% of our miles are probably in EV range. We mainly use this car to drive the kids around to their various activities, and every once in a while I take it out if I'm running an errand. But I usually take my Z3, so if you've seen my other videos, you know that I drive my Z3 around because I like to have a little bit of fun. But what I've noticed is on the EV range, our round trip drive to school and back for my son is probably right around 5 miles. And that includes a short trip on the freeway, and I'll kind of take you there right now even. But I've noticed that when I take him to school and back in the Rav4 Prime, the EV distance to empty only goes down by like 2 miles sometimes. So that doesn't really compute, right? Because obviously I drove 5 miles, but the distance to empty only goes down by 2. So I think that's a little bit funny. And then as of right now, I've driven like a half mile leaving my neighborhood, and my distance to empty has gone down by 1 mile. So that must be an estimate based on the current, temperature outside and how much gas I'm giving it. But I'm not really pushing down on the pedal much at all. I think I mentioned it earlier, but we leave our car in eco all the time. There's plenty of power. I'm not racing this car, but yeah, this isn't your typical slow, buzzy 4-cylinder Toyota. It has way more power. I think the last Toyota we owned before the Prime was back when my wife first got out of college, and she had a Toyota Corolla, and it was like a little 4-cylinder with like 130 horsepower, and we were always short on power. Always had to really hit the gas, especially going uphill like on a freeway. We would have to really get the 4-cylinder revving up high. And right now I'm getting on the freeway in the Prime, and I'm like probably about a third way into the throttle. I'm already at 60 miles an hour. We do have the roof rack crossbars, and I want to say I hear the wind noise on the freeway from the crossbars a lot because it's right above my head. So I've thought about removing the crossbars to get rid of some of that wind noise. One feature I really love is the lane tracking assist, and then I turn on the cruise control, and on the dash you see 2 sideways blue lines show up, and that shows you that it's locked into the markings on the road. And I find it really good. As long as the markings on the road are pretty accurate or pretty consistent, the car has no problem tracking up and down hills and going through turns and all that. I mean, obviously I'm going just straight right now, but it tracks going side to side, no problem. I think about every 8 to 10 seconds it'll tell me I need to put my hands on the steering wheel, and then I might jiggle it a little bit and it'll take over again. But right now I'm on my route to my kids' school, so I can kind of show you guys the drive there. And I guess we were driving kind of fast on the freeway right now. My distance to empty is now 47 miles, and I've driven 2 miles so far. According to the odometer, at least. I've driven 2 miles, and my range has gone down from 50 to 47. I'm not trying to like hyper mile this thing or get the most miles out of every charge. I'm just driving it normally, and I'm sure my wife does the exact same thing, because she's not somebody that's gonna really try to get the most miles out of a charge. She's not that type, and it's fine. Even on full EV mode, I know I don't get the full 302 horsepower, but it's more than enough power to get around town, and more than enough to get on the freeway. And it sure is a lot faster than the old Corolla she had, right? Now, the car we replaced with the Rav4 Prime was a 2015 Jetta 1.8T. And when we first got the Jetta, that was after my wife's Corolla. The Jetta felt so freaking fast, right? And my wife thought the Jetta was like a rocket compared to her old Corolla. But now she got the Prime, and she's like, oh my God, my Jetta was so slow, right? So that's kind of the comparison she's made. In regular EV mode, it's still totally fine. I think it's the torque really that makes a big difference. Everybody talks about the EV torque, and it's legit, it's real. The regen braking sometimes feels like I could have a little bit more regen braking. Like if it was adjustable, like when I'm getting off the freeway, I would probably just crank up the regen brake all the way. And that's one feature I wish I could have had, because maybe I could eke out another half mile or something like that if I'm getting off the freeway. But yeah, that's not something we have. And here we are, we're at my son's school, and I've driven about 3 miles now, just under 3 miles, and my distance to empty went from 50 to 46. I'm gonna take a U-turn here and then drive back home. Yep, we're just a little over 3 miles driven, I think now, because my odometer was at 2051 when I left my neighborhood. It currently says 2055, so we're probably right under 4 miles total driven, I think. Is that how the math works? Yeah, maybe right around 4 miles. But I'm not trying to like make a really fine specific measurement, but just to see if I'm in that ballpark. I do think we can get 40 miles out of it. 50 would be a stretch. I have read on some forums about folks getting 60 miles out of a charge, and I think that would be really, really good. I don't know if we'll ever reach that. Maybe if the conditions are just right and it's like 75 degrees out, no AC, no fan running, and maybe you can eke out like 50 miles. But 60 miles and up, that would be really crazy for this little battery, right? And the system does keep track of your total average miles per kilowatt hour. I'm getting 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, and I haven't seen it go up or down at all. It just seems to be pegged at 2.9. So we must be driving pretty consistently. If it gets kind of warm out, we do run the AC. We're like normal people. We're not trying to squeeze a lot of miles out of it. We just drive it normally. So that's kind of a benchmark for you. If you're trying to calculate that, I get 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. I want to say when we first bought the car, the indicator said like 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour, but I want to say in the last 1,500 miles or so, it's been pegged at 2.9. It hasn't moved from that number at all. And if you hear that little rattle or that little squeaky sound, it's not the car, it's my child's car seat. So I'm really sorry about that. I wish I unplugged it before I started the video, because it's kind of annoying me too. Which brings up a good point. If you're driving in EV mode, besides the wind noise from the crossbars above me, it's really quiet. I mean, it's a really serene ride. This isn't a car that I have any desire to drive fast in, because it's just such a nice, sweet ride. I'm gonna set the cruise control again. And instantly it locked into the lane. You can see the steering wheel turn a little bit and adjust for the road a little bit. But yeah, I feel totally confident, no hands driving, when the lane markers are really consistent. When the lane markers get broken up, it kind of gets lost. Put my hand on the wheel. Like right here, the lane markers are broken up. It still kept a straight track. That's pretty good, right? Now, I usually get off on this freeway exit, but I'm going to keep going to just show you kind of how the lane keeping works out. This is kind of a bad example, I guess, because we're pretty much going straight, but there are small twists and turns in the road still, and it tracks no problem. There's no lane markers on this side right now, and it's still tracking straight. I want to say it tracks this left side markers when there's no right side markers. Once in a while, I'll see the blue line indicating the lane keep. If there's no markers on one side, that line will disappear, and it kind of tells me it's still searching for it a little bit. But otherwise, it's fine. When there are curves in the road, like on the freeway, every once in a while it'll lose track of the road markers, and I don't know why that is. I thought it was because the road markers weren't consistent, but I've been on stretches of freeway where the road markers look perfectly consistent and they're really clear, and the Toyota still loses track of them. So I thought that was kind of weird. So that does happen from time to time, but for the most part, like 80% of the time, all the curves in the road are tracked really well by the Toyota. Now I turned cruise control off. I'm gonna get off the freeway here. Now, if you keep lane keep assist on, and you're not in cruise control and you're just driving around town, it still kind of keeps track of the road markers and keeps you somewhat within the lane, but it's not as aggressive. So what I mean by that is, it'll let you hit the bumps onto the next lane, and then it'll slowly correct. It's not as aggressive as the cruise control lane keep assist. But if you do cross over lines and you change lanes without signaling, you'll feel a little bit of resistance and a little bit of a bump from the steering wheel. Like, I'll do that right now once I get past these two lights here. Man, that sun's right in my eye. I kind of like that little electric whine you get when you're accelerating and slowing down the car. It's kind of a cool sound. As much as I hate the PWS speaker, and I hate that piece of crap, it sounds pretty good when it's accelerating and slowing down. It has like a little high-tech feel to it. And I probably sound like I'm contradicting myself just because I hate the PWS so much. Okay, so I'll show you. I have lane keep assist on, I have cruise control off, and obviously there's a divider, the bumps separating the two lanes. I'm gonna slowly drive into those bumps, and my lane keep assist is flashing orange. See, and then it kind of bumps my steering wheel to let me know, and it kind of steers back into the lane, but it lets me drift more into the other lane than with cruise control on. And you can see it's correcting itself right now. So I'm going to the middle divider, and again it's correcting itself. See, but I have a wheel in the other lane, and it didn't correct me right away. You see it tugging back, right? See, this time it let me change lanes all the way, probably because I veered into the other lane more aggressively. See, but right now I just went a little bit, and it steered me back into the lane. And when I go a little bit more aggressive, it doesn't intrude at all. I think that's kind of smart, because if you're someone that wants to keep lane tracking assist on all the time, then when you're making actual intentional movement to go into the next lane, it won't get in your way. But if you drift just a little bit into the next lane, then that intentional move isn't as obvious, and it'll keep you into the correct lane, or the current lane that you're in. I think that's pretty cool. Seems really smart. And it makes sense for it to be not as aggressive without cruise control on, because if you have cruise control on, you're probably on the freeway, and keeping the correct lane is probably going to be really, really critical, and you're probably not changing lanes as often as maybe you would driving around town. So I think that's pretty cool. So update on distance to empty. It says I have 42 miles left, and I have driven 8 miles since we left the house. The odometer was at 2,051 miles when I left the garage. Currently it's at 2,059 miles. So maybe it can get 50 miles on a charge. That would be a shocker, right? That's a lot of miles, dude. When it's only supposed to go 40. That makes it extremely efficient, right? So now I'm driving back home. And again, we're in eco all the time. I tried sport mode before, but this isn't really a sporty car. And I guess maybe it accelerates a little bit faster, but I couldn't really tell the difference. I don't feel like there's a delay in pedal response because I'm driving in eco. It feels perfectly fine, and it actually feels really powerful to me, so I think it's totally good. Driving in hybrid mode at the full 302 horsepower, yeah, it's a little bit faster, and if you step on the gas right off the line, it will spin the wheels a little bit more than just regular EV mode, but I don't know, it's not that impressive. Like, it doesn't feel that fast, it just feels really serene. If you've driven like a Tesla Model 3 before, it kind of feels like a really slow version of the Model 3, and by slow, it's kind of a relative comparison, right? It has the same EV feel like a Tesla does, but my friend has like a Performance 3, and of course that car is extremely fast. This car has the similar feel, just not as harsh and not as apparent, and it's really more than adequate. Like, it has plenty of power. And let me step on the gas right now. I'm in eco mode. I'm gonna floor it. It spun the wheels. Okay, so range check, I'm at 2,060 miles. So I've driven 9 miles since I left the garage, and my distance to empty in EV is 41 miles. That's really weird. So maybe I can get the full 50 miles on this charge. I don't think we've ever gotten 50. That's really crazy. My wife tells me that she gets right around 40 miles driving around town. And if she's like running the AC a lot and it's really cold outside, we've noticed cold and running AC, those are the two factors that run out the power a little bit faster. She says she gets about 37, 38 miles. So it's not a huge discount when running the AC or in cold temperature. Cold is a relative term. We live in California, so cold is like 45 degrees, right? So we need to get a new garage opener because we noticed it will not pick up. Oh, my garage opener works. Now that I mentioned that it's not gonna work. You know, I replaced the battery in it, and it's still not giving me the same range that it used to on the garage opener. I'll show you guys the screen once I'm parked here. All right, guys, so we're at 2,060 miles. When I left the garage, it was 2,051 miles. So we drove roughly 9 miles, and we still have 41 miles of EV range. And it's probably about 50 degrees outside. Oh, you can see it right on the dash. It says 48 degrees. And I'm not running the AC or a heater because it's really not that cold. And I was able to drive 9 miles, and our distance to empty is still 41 miles. That's pretty impressive. You can see the power gauge on our battery has gone down a little bit after this drive, but yeah, we have plenty of juice to go. Pretty impressive. We're on our, I think we're on our second tank of gas because I drove the car up from Los Angeles because I picked it up from Longo Toyota, and I drove it up to Northern California here. Besides that first tank of gas, we've filled it one more time since then, and we have 2,060 miles on the odometer. I wanted to go over the trip information with you here. I drove the car for 20 minutes here, right? and you see these E symbols. I guess each E is a 50 watt hour regen. So I guess if you have like 100 E's, then that would be 5 kilowatts, right? That's a lot of E's. It's funny, it doesn't tell you how many miles I actually drove. I'm not trying to get the most out of this car. We just drive it. Like, we're not trying to learn every bit and piece about this car. We're just driving it and just enjoying it as it is. And that's kind of what's great about this car. It's a no-brainer. You just get in it and drive. It feels pretty much like a normal car other than the torque and the extra power you get out of the motor. We leave it on eco, which is all the way to the left, and we just leave it on EV mode most of the time. If we run out of electricity, obviously it switches itself to hybrid mode. You can really hear the engine kick in, and that's when it gets a little bit noisy in the car. And my wife has mentioned like she prefers to just be in EV mode all the time because it's so serene and quiet. She loves it in EV mode all the time. Anyways, thanks for joining us. I hope this was informative and you had a good time. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.